Guys, Bill here, and in this video I'm going to talk about how I set up my pivot points on SPY. If you follow me on Twitter, you probably have seen me post the SPY blueprint on Sundays, and also during the week refer to the pivots and how well they hold up and how I trade them daily and make good returns, good profits by playing bounces off these pivots or confirmations on breaks above or below them for intraday trading. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I set these up. And obviously, there's different factors that come into play each day with regards to range and expectations of SPY's movement and all this stuff that, is very contextual based. But let's talk about the basics here, okay? The first and major part of this pivot construction is confluence. And confluence just means the process of things merging. Okay. So in this instance, it's levels. I want to see two or more, ideally, levels that I trust really close to each other in price. Because I found that those are the areas that you can most rely on price respecting. So what are the levels that I plot on charts? I've been over this in a few other videos, but I plot dark pools. I plot gamma exposure levels. I plot anchored VWAPs. I plot daily gaps. And of course, I use fibs. A variety of fibs, all different time frames. And fibs themselves, when you plot different time frames, will naturally have key levels that overlap or create harmonics, as they like to call it, and those show places that there's going to be extra strength, extra respect. So I've got SPY pulled up here, and some of these pivots I was using today, like 407.90. That's our anchored VWAP from all-time highs. That was our low today. Gave us a really nice, almost $4 bounce. Was able to play calls off that. 414. This was my major pivot to the downside today. And you can see that let's go to a little bit smaller time chart here. We lost it early in the morning on a close under and just flushed all the way down to my next pivot. Okay, so why did I have these chosen? Well, at 414, we have multiple things going on. We have a large positive gamma level. We have two fibs of different time frames converging, and we had a dark pool level. Okay, so that's 4 levels of confluence. That was why it's a major level for me. Up here at the top, you see I have this 418 as a pivot. That's because we have the COVID fib, my longest time frame fib, longer the time frame, stronger the level, and a major negative GEX level. All right, confluence. This is one area where we didn't have any confluence coming into the day, but the anchored VWAP from all-time highs is such a long time frame level that I trusted on its own. But to even make me feel better about buying calls off of it when I did today, 0 DTE GEX on TradyTix had a strong support level here. And that just gave me extra conviction. And at the same time, VIX was coming up to 20. And if you guys follow VIX, you'll have seen that over the last several weeks, every time we've got close to 20 on VIX, it's got shoved down and given SPY some strength. Okay. So that's pivot there. Now, where do you decide, sometimes there's other places on the chart where you have a couple levels coming together here, as you can see in other spots. When do you put a pivot somewhere and when do you don't? Well, a lot of it comes down to expected range, and none of us can predict this perfectly every day, but there's times when you start to have a pattern where you have more range in SPY and less range in SPY. If we look back at like early March and through most of the month, you can see that we've got a lot of nice big candles here. 1.5%, almost 2%, 1.5%, 1.5%. 2%, 1.5%, 1%, just lots of big days on SPY. And then you see we get up here into April and it's 1/3%, flat, flat, 0.5%, flat, flat, right? After a couple days of a trend like this in the size of your daily range, you need to start adjusting your pivots. So in this type of tight range chop, you might have a pivot every couple dollars or even sometimes every buck. In ranges like this, where you can get a $10 swing in one day, you might have your pivots every $3 or $4. You'll notice that right now I have these pivots set up. They're pretty far apart. Well, that's because we have FOMC tomorrow. And I'm sure you guys know, if you've traded during FOMC before, there's wild swings, right? So I haven't finished making all these pivots for today, and I still have a little more research to do, but I'm planning for any range of crazy possibilities, okay? And one way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use gamma levels, or I'm sorry, not gamma levels, but delta distributions to give me estimates of what, based on dealers' positioning, what they think about the potential moves by the end of this week will be. Right here you see that the most likely outcome is a bullish move of up to 2%. Our second most likely outcome is a bullish move up to 1.1. Third most likely is a tie of bearish moves from either up to 1.1 or 2.1% down. So let's see on the chart here. 2.1% up on SPY from where we are today would roughly be a little over $8, which would put us up in the 418 area. Oh, perfect. Right? I already have a pivot there. Okay, so that's a good place to likely have a top if we really rip the rest of the week. But we could have more, right? So what's my next spot here? I also like to plot gaps on charts. And SPY has a gap that has not been filled yet. We've been halfway through it, but all the way back from August 22nd, we have this gap here. So just for extra safety, if we are to have a great reaction to FOMC and continue ripping up the rest of the week and exceed the expectations of dealer in delta distribution, then I think that I would feel good about this being a major pivot. When gaps get filled, they oftentimes become resistance or support, depending on which side you're trading. And so I would expect if we filled this, there could be a little resistance and a pushback, or if we get over it, there's a lot of room up to my next big fib here. All right, now, heading down, what if we tank? Well, obviously this level's important. It's this anchored VWAP on the monthly. It held well today. And if you look at the anchored VWAP from all-time highs, which is this line here, you can see how well it's respected. And now this is a large time frame, right? This is monthly candles, guys. So little, wicks and stuff like that. It's not like we're watching a 5-minute chart here. Once we really lost this anchored VWAP up here on this nasty candle, test, fail, wick over, fail, fail, climb back, fail, fail again, finally close the monthly back over it. We've stayed over it ever since and made our local highs after it, right? So this anchored VWAP, and it, you can see it moves month to month. It doesn't always move a ton. It might just be a few cents. It's mostly been in this 408, 407, high 407 range for a few months now, but it moves and it flows. And I update it day to day. You can see that now it's actually 408. So it moved up 10 cents today. So I'm going to update that. And I got to update my pivot alert here. Okay. So what if we lose 408? What if FOMC comes in nasty and we flush? All right. I think that 400 is my next big pivot. And that is for, a few reasons. We have our largest negative GEX level there. We have the 618 fib right there. And just below, just 30 cents below, we have the start of this bull gap that's unfilled and another fib. So this is and this is something that happens fairly often. You'll have a pivot and there's a bit of a buffer zone. So I call it 400 to keep it nice and clean, but anywhere down to 398.70, 398.50 here, this is all kind of one spot for me. So if price dips into here, I'm still thinking, let's think that there's probably going to be some support here, right? This bullish gap, they're going to want to protect this area. But if we start to lose it, then we can short down for the gap fill. And then there's going to probably be some more support there initially. And if we lose that, then we start to really go down, right? And you can see that just here on this daily chart, this is a pretty key spot. Wick, 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 wick. Okay. I also marked this area for the same reason. All those wicks there, wick down here, respect, respect. And if you look at the 4 hour, it's a little cleaner. But this is what I would consider. You could make this a pivot. I would have no issue with that on a day where, especially if we're trading like a single day's worth of action. And this is more like the rest of the week's action, right? I'm setting bigger pivots based on the next 3 days of potential outcome on that range on delta distribution. If we're just looking at tomorrow, this is probably going to be a pivot for me. Look at the 4 hour chart. First test up here, wick, trap, candle, flush. Come back up, overtake it, nice move. Retest it, hold, hold, becomes support. Nice move up. Comes back, support, support, loses it, but it's a false breakdown. Reclaim, rip, okay? So this 405.70, I have no problem with that being a pivot. And guys, this is just kind of how I do it, right? I just go through, I look for places with a lot of respect for price, and sometimes that's a single level. Ideally, it's a, you know, it's a few different things. Gammas, dark pools, gaps, fibs, even like previous days highs and lows, things like that. Anchored VWAPs. The more the merrier. The more confluence for me, the better. That gives me the confidence that levels are going to hold for reversals, or once they're broken, are going to lead to the floodgates opening in either direction. All right. I think that covers everything. Let's see. Yeah, that really does. If you guys have any questions, anything else about the pivots, just let me know. Send me a message, Twitter DM, leave a comment on YouTube, whatever you got to do, and I'll help you out. All right. Thanks, guys.